Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Lombardo, host of VendorVibes and fractional CMO. Today, I'm here with Danica Smith, who is an independent guest advisor. I'm so happy to have you here, Danica. Nice to see you.
Nice. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Welcome. So, I'm excited to learn about what you do.
Yeah, so I wear many hats, many different hats, but it's all under the realm of guest experience. I have 15 years of hospitality technology and an ex-hotelier before that. And I'm really passionate, slightly obsessed with just really bringing guest experience back on the table. And when I say guest experience, I come from the world of guest intelligence, guest satisfaction, and I feel conversations from tech vendors and operator side, and certainly conference agendas. The guest satisfaction part has kind of dropped off the table, and I think it's the most important element of everything that we do. You know, when my mother comes to stay at your property, how does she feel when she leaves? So I work with both hotels and accommodation providers and hotel tech vendors to really help put guest satisfaction on the table, whether that is with the product development on the tech vendor side or on the operator side, looking at KPIs and processes to make sure that guest satisfaction and guest experience really sits at the heart of what we do.
Interesting. I'm surprised to hear that about the guest experience because guest
Mm.
stays and choices are being driven by guest reviews these days.
I know, but people forget about it, Rebecca. You know, I think we've got so much cool technology at our fingertips and, a little bit of overwhelm as well. But lots of people will focus on digitalizing the guest journey or having, omni guest channels or seamless, frictionless guest journeys and the booking engine and the booking journey. But they forget, well, if your room was not clean, everything else is wasted. So it's that kind of bringing it back to the basics, making sure we've nailed the basics before we get kind of obsessed with that booking pre-arrival journey. And I think that's kind of lost its wayside a little bit in the last 12, 18 months.
Interesting. So, when you talk about the technology, I know that that can be a critical piece because also if the technology is not right, then communication with the guest is not right. And if communication with the guest is not right, the guest satisfaction is going to be low.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely linked. But when you look at guest sentiment in reviews, and just yourself, if you ask your friends and family, think back to your most memorable stay in the last 12 months, it's very rarely somebody will say the really efficient digital check-in or the really perfectly timed WhatsApp message. No, it's the warm smile that the receptionist gave me or the people. So I think, the technological side of the guest journey is amazing, but I think we focus too much on that and we separate it. And really, as a user, when I'm interacting with Netflix or Amazon, I'm not thinking about the algorithms and all the sophistication behind the output. I'm just enjoying the experience. And I somehow feel in hospitality we've kind of lost our way a little bit, and they're too separated, and we see it as like, is it hybrid? How do we have a hybrid approach of digital advancement and automation combined with human? That's the best kind of approach. And I'm just like, let's just merge it as one and look at the guest experience in terms of, is my guest satisfied?
So how are you helping hoteliers?
Well, for example, I have a client and tech vendors as well. And this particular client, they've got 32 properties in the UK, kind of four-star city centre, corporate based midweek, OTA bookings on the weekends. And they've implemented a really cool, sophisticated, seamless digital guest journey. But they actually force their guests to check in online if they want early check in. Digital dining is through their mobile app. It's the only way you can order room service. So, sitting in the board meetings, I support them looking at the right KPIs because prior to working, or they would phone me and say, Danica, our digital check-in hit 70% and we've made X amount of revenue through our digital dining, which is fantastic. But it's really important you then have the final step of, okay, well, how is that improving guest sentiment? How is that moving the needle on guest satisfaction? And in this particular case, it was actually having a really detrimental impact on their guest sentiment because guests were forced to order room service via the app digitally because it was the only way you could get room service. So that's a great example of making sure that guest satisfaction in whatever strategy you have, back of house, head office, digitalizing the guest journey, you need to know, is it moving the needle in the right direction or not? And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are forgetting that final step of really closing the loop.
So do you always start with the KPIs?
Yeah, like it really depends. I'm really lucky. Some of the hotels that I work with are completely obsessed with the guest experience, and it's not just at KPI level. It's really culturally where, it sits within every member. It's how they hire, it's how they train, it's how they build their hotels around the guest experience. And then I have others that are completely new, and we start off small. So it really depends on what is that culture, what's the structure as well. It depends what's centralized versus decentralized, and that tends to have different KPIs and strategies as well. But it's first of all making sure people have access to the right data. So, if you're in housekeeping, please don't show your housekeeping F&B scores. Everybody's busy. So for the first step is mapping out the guest intelligence, right data to the right people, and then building on that engagement and then setting the KPIs. You can't expect to set maintenance or housekeeping a KPI from 0 to 100 when they've never opened an email of the guest satisfaction reports that they get emailed every Friday.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So can you tell me an example of an experience that you've had recently where you were working with someone and they were really happy with you?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, I had one this morning. So, one of my other hats is I'm a lecturer for university students studying strategic management in hospitality. So, they're fourth year students, so it's their final year. And so, I guess they're like 22, 23, 24. And, strategy as a topic in hospitality. It's been so interesting, Rebecca, because all of the theories there, and must I know, a lot of the theories that I'm quoting are from 1980s, 1970s. There's not a lot of frameworks like Porter's 5Ps, pestle analysis. They're great, but it's trying to put that into context. And throughout the semester, I've really tried to get them to understand, okay, this is great. Your strategic theory is fantastic, but reality, especially in hospitality, is how can you actually implement this, and what is the frustrations around that? So I've tried to bring in real life speakers talking about strategic change, acquisitions in our industry. So today it was my final class of the students, and it was so sweet. Three of them came up to me and thanked me for giving them the kind of like real insight into what it looks like. And we spoke, I spent a lot of time focusing on leadership and cultures because, again, you can have the best strategy, but when it comes to implementation and execution, it really comes down to what leaders you have and what culture the business has. So we spent time kind of helping them look at, right, when they're looking at the job market, how can you kind of test what the leadership looks like? What questions can you ask? And that was really fulfilling that they thanked me and said that I kind of helped connect the theory to the reality as they go out into the world. So that was great. That was one of the most fulfilling feedback that I've had this year.
Amazing. That's great. And I love that kind of youthful outlook too. It's like they haven't quite hit that stage of, being in it too long and feeling like they know everything or, they're open
Yeah.
to it. So I think if we can all maintain that mentality of like, I'm just a student, um,
Yeah.
we can always improve on anything.
Yeah, and it's quite a difficult balance because I didn't want to be all doom and gloom, but I also wanted to really give them a sense of reality. And in hospitality, especially whether on the tech vendor side or the operator side, we don't have the time to strategize and brainstorm. We don't have the resources. I mean, just look around us. We're all running. We're all doing two jobs in for one job, and so it's kind of like as a 24-year-old entering the workplace, how do you excite them enough to enter this industry, but give them kind of like a realistic view of sometimes you have a strategy and you implement within a week in the real world.
Right, right. Well, that's really interesting. If anybody listens to this and wants to get in touch with you or learn more about what you do, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think on LinkedIn, and it's funny as well, Rebecca, how things just align. One of the other hats that I wear is I'm a podcast host for Hospitality Daily. And so last week with my university students, the topic was structure, organizational structure within hospitality. And I interviewed Matthew Bell, who was one of the leaders of Citizen M's scale up. He took Citizen M from three properties and scaled them, and he's now moved on to another business doing the same thing. And hearing, I'm so lucky to be able to interview different leaders, and it was so ironic that on that day Matthew was talking about structures of an organization, and he spoke about the starfish analogy of how you can chop a starfish in half and it can multiply, and that's what Citizen M leaned on for their scale and growth. In order to still remain there, keep their authentic creativity and keep their staff close to the guests. And so that was today we've launched his podcast. And so that's a great learning that, via my LinkedIn, people can find and listen to a fantastic leader talk about strategy in the workplace in terms of growth. So that was also a lovely light bulb moment and connecting the dots.
Nice. Yeah, I saw that post and I love that you're so active on LinkedIn. That's great.
It's a bit cringeworthy sometimes, but thanks, Rebecca. I really struggle with, when you go somewhere and they're like, "Oh, I've seen you on LinkedIn." I still have that imposter syndrome and like, oh, it's a bit awkward. And I'm trying to, because it's so important. And that's why I really appreciate you taking your time to interview me today.
Yeah, no, it was my pleasure. And I think everything that you share is always insightful. So I think you're doing great.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca.